Hey, what's up, everybody? Peacock here in Singapore, and it is about 1 o'clock in the morning. I am recording now because I have another podcast live on Facebook with Created's very own August Crenshaw. So we're talking about contracts and chargebacks on that podcast. But tonight, I want to talk to you about something else. So I've been watching Shadowhunters on Netflix. I'm just going to pass the time as I cook and stuff like that. And I came across an episode where there is a particular werewolf. Her name is Maya, and she comes face to face with the person who turned her into a werewolf, a young man named Jordan. I think Jordan Kyle or something like that. Anyway, so she comes face to face with him, and it's the relationship between the two of them. She's been mad at him for a very long time. He kind of disappeared as soon as he turned her. She didn't have anyone to rely on or have a support network to help her figure out the changes. And I thought it was really interesting because I think a lot of people find themselves in that very same position. I know for myself, I did as well. There was a season in my life where I felt like I need certain people to be the bad guy. And if they weren't the bad guy, then I wonder if I was actually the bad guy or if I actually made up the whole situation where I was angry at them. Was I justified in being mad at them if they weren't actually the bad guy? And here's my understanding of that now, looking back at that situation. I know that people make mistakes. I know they're all human and they do the best they can with what they have. Obviously, a lot of us don't consider what the other person is going through, so we kind of just like muddle through it, right? But in that regard, are you justified in being upset with them when you suddenly know that they're human and they're doing the best that they can? Can that still exist? And the answer is yes and no, depending on your maturity, right? I feel like if you're mature enough to understand that everyone does the best they can with what they know, which allows them to make stupid mistakes or act in the moment, in their feelings about something or the other, which may or may not hurt the persons involved, then yeah, okay, it gives them space and they do make stupid situations, but it doesn't negate the fact that you're upset. It doesn't change the fact that, you were hurt by something that they did. Hey, Avina. But some of us need the bad guy, right? In this situation, in this movie, what I found was this young lady was really upset and she really needed for him to be the bad guy so she could stay mad at him because that's how her life made sense. That's the only way her life made sense. She had concocted this story about why he did what he did and he didn't care enough to stick around because that's how it made sense to her and she felt justified in being angry with him all this time. But when she came face to face with him years after the fact and he said, look, I've changed. I'm not the same man I was before. And honestly, I couldn't control who I was because I had just changed myself. And I didn't even know that I had done what I had done to you until after the fact. And when I did realize what I had done, I was so full of guilt and shame, I just ran away. I didn't know what else to do. But when she heard that, she got even more upset. It triggered her again because she felt like, oh my God, but if that's what you were going through, that means it wasn't really your fault. You did the best you could. So am I then justified in being mad at you? And her immediate response to him was, stop, I don't want to hear anymore. Can I just be mad at you? I need to be mad at you. And it clicked for me because suddenly I realized that, you know what? A lot of people are still going through this. They don't know how to put it aside. They don't know how to turn it off and put it away. They've built their whole idea of who they are around these one or two big things that happen in their life. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but even when they have space to let it go and they've come forward somehow, they feel like taking that anger away and putting it away somehow brings them back a couple of steps instead of keeping them at that forefront where they've moved forward. They feel like they've dropped back a couple steps instead. And that's not the case. That's a new level of maturity. They say when you go through something major and when you can tell the story of what happened without tearing up, that you've gotten over it, that you've kind of, formulated a new identity, you've moved forward a little bit. And yes, that's true, except for when you come face to face with the person who started that change for you or the situation where everything like fell apart for you in the first place. For me, it was talking to my ex again and realizing that he was acting as if nothing had ever happened. Everything was just hunky-dory. We were still the best of friends and we still shared everything with each other like nothing happened. And I came away from that conversation thinking, well, he seems cool and everything seems okay. And did I dream up this whole situation? Obviously I didn't, but at that point when I first started talking to him again, this is back when I was trying to get the divorce sorted out, right? When I was talking to him again, he made me feel like what was I even thinking of? What could have possibly gone wrong? Because he was talking to me like everything was cool. We weren't in the same country. So of course he would talk to me like everything is cool, because he needs for everything to be cool. That's how he's created his identity. For me, I justified the fact that I left him by the story. It's not really a story, it's the truth, but reminding myself that he did this, this, and this, and it was no longer a good relationship to live in and raise a daughter in, so I left. But it did upset me. It really set me reeling for a little bit after that conversation with him. Suddenly I was like, well, wait, did I make up the whole thing? Was I justified? Did I do the right thing? Should I go back? And it took me a minute to realize, nope, I was right with what I did. The person he was with me at the time is not the person I needed. It was the worst person for me at the time. And I don't know if I triggered him or if he triggered me, but the point is, we were not a good match at that point in time. And now that he's maybe matured, maybe he's pretended like nothing happened, but I've matured to the point that I know I can never go back. I don't want to go back. There's nothing in me that draws me back to him, but there's no reason for me to feel like I'm off balance either, because he appears to have not been changed by any of this. Like nothing happened. Like we were the best of friends still. But I know that's not always the case for everybody. So I wanted to make sure that you understand, even though I had entitled this, I Need the Bad Guy, I need you to understand that maybe for a little while you need to hold on to the anger, to kind of get past the fact that you maybe go back and forth between wanting to be with that person and not wanting to be with that person. I know what that feels like when you're in those situations where you're dependent on that person for all the wrong reasons. And maybe sometimes they're really sweet to you, and maybe sometimes they're really terrible, but you don't know what to do. And sometimes you need to hold on to that anger until you can get away from the situation itself, put some distance between you and that person, and you can sort out your own mess and figure out who you are again. In those instances, absolutely. But at some point, you got to put the anger away. At some point, once you've built yourself back up, you don't need that crutch anymore. You are healed. But putting it away can sometimes have its own problems, have its own pain associated with it. So I want you to know there is no right or wrong answer. I want you to know that eventually, you're not supposed to hold all the grudges. Eventually, none of that should affect you anymore. Eventually, you should be able to tell the story without getting affected by telling the story. Yeah, maybe you get choked up a little bit, but you shouldn't be falling apart anymore. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes distance. And no, sometimes it means you go back a couple times. Sometimes it means you fall apart a couple times. But every time you pick yourself back up, you get a little bit stronger, and it gets a little bit easier to keep moving forward. So whatever is going on in your life, wherever you might find yourself, know that you feel the way you do for a particular reason. You have to learn to set boundaries for yourself. And even though you need the bad guy in the beginning to justify the fact that you had to leave that person, even though that had to happen, at some point, you're going to have to leave it behind too. At some point, you're going to realize, I need to let this go, or I'm going to be dragged by it going forward. It's not going to be easy. It's not without some heartache. But at some point, your identity should not be built around how angry you are with somebody else. It should not be built around the fact that, oh, they told me that I was nothing, so I built myself out of nothing, and that's why, and I hate this person. You should not have that. Having to be angry at someone takes up energy. It does not create more energy, it takes up energy. It depletes you in little ways. So the goal is to love yourself so much that none of these people can take from you. You don't put your energy anywhere where it's not actually needed and necessary for growth. Because let's face it, when you're mad at someone, you don't actually hurt them unless you tell them you're mad at them all the time. And even then, eventually they're probably in one ear out the other. But at some point, you won't need to be mad at them anymore. At some point, you will realize, yes, they're human, and this is who they are, and you feel sad for them, but you no longer need to be angry with them. That is the entire goal, to be happy. with who you are, with everything you've been through. Just keep moving forward. Build yourself up and up and up. And that's it. I love you guys. I hope this made sense. And I'll catch you again soon. Good night.